Christian Ray.
You were like the Justin Bieber of Russia.
I would like to think of myself more of a Justin Timberlake of Russia. Actually, the last song I recorded on my first album called Our Generation, and it was this anthem-y song, very sort of bold, almost abrasive song, almost like a song of protest for people who, just found this freedom. And the communists were leading in the polls. And Boris Yeltsin's team chose my song as the anthem, so they played it everywhere.
Not many people can say that helped keep communism out of Russia. You went from being this pop star sensation over here to literally being nobody. I don't say that in a negative way, but nobody. How did you manage that, in a sense, loss of identity?
And by making these small compromises, step by step, we wake up one day. A lot of the times, this is between 35 and 45 years old, and we go, "What am I doing exactly? This doesn't bring me joy. There's something I can feel it in my bones that there's something that I'm good at, that gives me sort of this life-giving part of me that is not activated in this thing that I'm doing." That misery is going to flow over into your family, into your friendships, into your creativity, and ultimately it will actually stop you from progressing even in the thing that you're doing. Are you doing what you're supposed to do? Are you solving problems that you're supposed to be solving in a way that is unique to you?
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I am here with Christian Ray Flores. Christian, great to see you.
Good to see you too, my man.
Christian, a lot of people in the West, especially, we are driven to climb up the corporate ladder, to climb up the mountain, but often people get to a point where they realize, something's not working for me anymore. Tell me a little bit about that, because this is the kind of people you work with.
Yes, one of the things that I do, I'm pretty professionally ADD or ADHD, whatever is more appropriate, is a performance coaching program. So I work with basically professionals who reach a plateau. Either they reach a plateau and they want to overcome it as soon as possible, or they're preparing their next big move and they want to be ready, be up to the task. So that's Exponential.
You said something earlier when you said, a lot of times we find out we've been living someone else's life. And so can we talk a little bit more about that? What do you mean by that?
I think there's this tension between who we are born to be, right, on this end. It's the potential of who you are, right? And then how do you fit into your tribe, whatever that means? It could be your country, your culture, the expectations, status, money, family, mom and dad want something for you, that kind of thing. And everybody lives in that tension. I think in the West, there's a heavy lean towards living somebody else's story. Although we claim that we are very individualistic, we choose our own paths and stuff like that, I think we still lean towards living somebody else's story. It might not be sort of the thing that we rebel against, which is, I'm going to find my own way. That's not the issue. I think Americans are very, very individualistic in that sense. But it's really more about what the society expects from me, keeping up with the Joneses, status, money, et cetera, et cetera. And by making these small compromises, step by step, we wake up one day. A lot of the times, this is between 35 and 45 years old. And we go, "What am I doing exactly? This doesn't bring me joy. There's something I can feel it in my bones that there's something that I'm good at, that gives me sort of this life-giving part of me that is not activated in this thing that I'm doing." And I find a lot of people are exactly in that place, and they don't exactly know how to get there because it's so very incremental how they got there. So a lot of what we do is sort of unpack that and help them fine tune, and start living this life. I call it an exponential life. It's a life that is ever expanding, that it's multidimensional, holistic, and it has the maximum impact you can bring to the world, because I think every single one of us was born to serve others, right? And that's what makes us happy, ultimately. So if we're off, even by a degree or two, we feel it, right? We feel that we're off. And it's sort of painful. So, yeah.
You have done a lot of things in your career. In fact, you and I first met in our ministry years, right? So there was a faith. I know there's always been a faith component to your life, but from a work perspective, you worked in ministry for a while, but you have been a musician. We'll get to that in a moment. You've led a media company.
Yeah.
You've got this coaching where you work with individuals who, like you said, are trying to find, hey, I'm not as happy as I should be. I don't enjoy my life as much as I should, or I feel like I want to. What motivated you to start that company?
You mean Exponential?
Yes.
It was that thing. It was. There's part of me that is underutilized, right? When I feel that, I usually make a turn, and I've done it my whole life, quite frankly, and that's why I'm sort of good at it, teaching others, because I've had this ability to zig and zag throughout my life, for literally my whole adult life, and it's brought me tremendous advantages, tremendous joy, tremendous reach, impact, and things like that. So to give you an idea, I entered the workforce. I graduated with a master's degree in economics. I speak 4 different languages. Most of my sort of classmates were going into trade, into banking, into like the Wild West. It was in Russia and Eastern Europe. So it was right after the Soviet Union fell apart. People were getting rich overnight, right? And I was just not into it, right? I was like, I've been musical my whole life. I want to try a music career. And of course, most people look at me going, what is wrong with you, right? Because it is crazy. Like on paper, when it comes to a rational sort of view, the percentage of people who make it in the music business is like probably 1% maybe. If you're going into business, it means you're going into unemployment, right? Into being broke for a long time. So it's not a rational decision, but it is an intuitive, passion, self-awareness type move. And that was my first move. It was a zag when everybody was zigging, And, a year and a half after that, I got three offers of a record deal and became one of the top pop stars in Russia for about a decade. And that was my first move. And I've had 5 different careers so far, right? And when you do something that is counterintuitive and start understanding the mechanics of it, right, the dynamics of it, why that enriches your life, you can do it over and over and over again. And yes, there's risk involved, but I think you live this fuller, more impactful life. You also get skills that an ultra specialist will never get. There's a lot of science behind it too, actually. I found that, of course, in retrospect. I wasn't calculating that in advance. It was more of an intuitive thing.
You're definitely a multi-passionate guy, and as you said, you've done many careers. Let's go back, though, for a moment in Russia. So you spent a good chunk of your life growing up in Russia. You become a pop star. And you told me the story one time.
Yeah.
Do you want to repeat it, though, for those who are listening, about how that record deal happened?
Yeah, so I was actually born in Moscow, but I grew up in Chile, Germany, then Africa, then back to Russia when I was a teenager. My parents got divorced, so I went back to Russia with my mom. She was from there, and it was a strange time, because I came back and I was super depressed actually for a while, because it was like Soviet Union, rock bottom, like food lines, things like that. It was terrible. So I graduate with this degree. And literally the year that the whole thing falls apart, like it just crumbles like a house of cards. And I think that really helped me, actually. It was almost like a tipping point for me to do something bold, because I later realized that my whole life I've been such unpredictable sort of environments, right? I was a refugee at age 5. I was in exile. We moved 4 different countries by age 7. That it sort of instilled in me this little seed of awareness that if nothing is certain, then anything is possible. And it really was a massive blessing. That was a gift to me. From on the surface, a pretty hard life, right? But everything was possible. So when I get out of college and the Soviet Union, the whole Eastern Bloc falls apart, just folds. No one expected it to do so, and it just folds and disintegrates. I go, you know what? I'm going to do something really bold. I'm going to start doing music. So I was doing these. I was already very musical. I sang my whole life. I was a dancer. I was a break dancer. I did choreography. These were all hobby things that I did for a long time, and I was pretty good at them. And at the time, what I did is I was like singing backup to this little jazz fusion band, and I was trying here and there, but it was nothing close to anything significant. So I would hang out. I was trying to be around people who are in the vicinity. I was the entourage, right? So I made friends with some musicians, and I was at this after party after a big show that I got sort of a special invitation to. And somebody comes up to me, and this guy is this short guy, and he goes, "Hey, you look like you're an artist." And I, of course, dressed the part, although I had nothing to show for it. And he was like, "You're an artist?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "I own a music studio." And to me, that was like, he was the owner of the golden ticket, right? Because at the time, you couldn't record at home. You couldn't record anything at home. You have to have access to a studio. A studio was, especially back then, post-Soviet times, there was maybe 5 of them in the whole city. And all of them were completely out of reach cost-wise, right? There's no way. So when somebody says, "I have a studio," you pay attention. And I go, "Yeah, oh my gosh, yes." And he goes, "If I give you some night hours at the studio, what would you do with that?" I said, "I would just bring some good songs and, work with an arranger, and maybe you can record some demos that I think they're going to be good." He goes, "Who's going to write the songs?" I'm like, "I'm going to write the songs." "Who's going to write the lyrics?" "I'm going to write the lyrics." And I'm like, "All right, see you Monday," or something like that. And I had never written a song or a lyric in my life, right? So I went home and wrote some songs and some lyrics, and that's how it all started. And he liked them. He liked them, actually. And it started with that, and then that was my first shot, right? And from there, it evolved. I found somebody to work with as a producer, music producer, and we were so all in that we rented an apartment together. And all we did all day was listen to CDs of R&B and pop and hip-hop, and we would experiment with sounds, and we would come up with songs, and they were terrible songs until they were decent songs, and the rest is history, basically.
When you were like the Justin Bieber of Russia.
I would like to think of myself more of as just Justin Timberlake of Russia. Because I didn't have like the complete, baby thing, right? But yes, it was a pop. I was a heartthrob pop, icon. Yes, that is true. That is appropriate.
That must have been a wild time. And also, your music had a big influence on the country back then.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was it went big very fast. And the reason for that, I think there was a demand for Western sounding music, and not enough people who knew how to do it. And I had grown up overseas, so I had all this access to the aesthetic, the culture, all of that stuff. I was immersed in that, and I had a work ethic and some talent. And I was essentially sort of caught the pulse of the generation of this newfound freedom. And the themes of the songs were very happy, poppy, but they had that thread in them, right? This new thing. And I had like several hits in a row that were on MTV everywhere and radio and things like that. And then I did this one song it was actually the last song I recorded on my first album, called Our Generation. And it was this anthem-y song, very sort of bold, almost abrasive song, almost like a song of protest for people who just found this freedom. And it just happened. So that came out December 95. 96 was the election year where Boris Yeltsin was trying to get reelected, and the communists were leading in the polls. So this was the last chance, the last time the communists were actually going to win. And Boris Yeltsin's team chose my song as the anthem, so they played it everywhere. The ads, and I campaigned for him, TV, tours all over the country, all of that stuff. So it had a small impact on basically getting Boris Yeltsin elected and keeping the communists out of power.
Yeah, there you go. Not many people can say that they
Yeah.
helped keep communism out of Russia.
Yeah, and the irony is that both my parents were communists, right? So I grew up in a Marxist, environment, in a Marxist household. So it made for some awkward conversations, with my parents.
You also lived in Kiev, Ukraine, for a while.
I did, yeah, but that was right before I moved to the U.S. I was in Kiev. Mm-hmm.
As you look at that whole situation, you have friends in Russia.
Yeah.
You have friends in Ukraine. What do you make of all of that?
Well, I think it's incredibly tragic and sad, right? So it was actually a very traumatic thing for me. I'm actually a quarter Ukrainian. My grandpa was Ukrainian. My grandma was Russian. Then my oldest two daughters were born in Moscow. My youngest daughter was actually born in Kiev. And what I make of it is that it is unfortunately the DNA of an imperial sort of culture and imperial Russia. Russia was always imperial, actually. It was imperial. It was just imperial under different management. So it was imperial under the Tsars. It was imperial under the Bolsheviks, and it's still imperial under the current regime. And they always have seen Ukraine as, that is the biggest asset to the empire that they lost during the dissolution. So they always thought that Ukraine belonged to them, and they thought that people would welcome that, and they didn't. So I found myself losing my mind essentially for a few months there when it all happened, and I was on the phone with friends who were they were in bomb shelters there. I can hear the machine gun fire outside their windows. Things like just horrible things I never thought I would ever witness. So we ended up starting a nonprofit. I already had a nonprofit called the Send Mission Fund, and we were doing work in Mozambique in Africa, and I just sort of started a new program within Ascend to help refugees in Ukraine, and we raised several $100,000 in the first 2 months. I pretty much dropped everything and started doing that, and it was definitely it was traumatic. It was impactful. Also, the highlight of my life, one of the highlights of my life, is being able to help when there's such tragedy happening, and not just sort of sitting there watching it on TV, horrified. And we're able to help thousands of refugees. We actually made a trip there, my wife and I, during the war. So 2 years ago, we went there, and it was pretty intense. So,
what was that like going into Ukraine as a Russian? Did you have any problems with that?
I don't look Russian, and so I am well. I can pass off as anybody, right? So, and it's not that I was shy. I spoke Russian there freely, no problem. In Kiev, a lot of people speak Russian, but because I don't look Russian and I'm there to help, people are very happy. So, they don't. I don't think they hate Russians. I think a lot more do have that general trauma sort of experience, and vice versa, right? Because the Russians have been sort of convinced that Ukraine is an adversarial force, which it actually is not, So, but it was terrible. It really was. Being there, we flew into Poland, had to drive to the border, cross the border by foot, take a train up. We got picked up to go to Lviv. Spent a couple of days in Lviv with the program that we were funding there. Took a train to Kiev. We went to all those infamous places like Bucha and Irpin, where there was torture, there was mass graves. We would drive but by minefields that hadn't been even disabled yet. Like they're full of little flags with the bones and stuff like that, and spoke to people that were there under occupation, every day we were there, and we literally cried every single day. Like, it was, I don't think I've ever cried as a grown-up that much as I did in Ukraine when we were there for about 10 days. And the stories that we've heard were, I wouldn't have honestly believed them unless I had spoken to eyewitnesses who would literally show me pictures on their phones. It was just, it's like 10x of what you see on TV. That, I can tell you that. It's pretty bad.
There are a lot of tough things going on in the world, for sure.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've admired about you is your ability to reinvent yourself. And I think there's this, maybe this is just in the West, but it's almost like there's this pressure of you got to find your thing and then you got to do it.
Yeah.
And it's like we've also added in this concept of purpose. You hear this so much, find your passion, find your purpose. I think a lot of people struggle with that because they might have a diverse talent set. And so then it puts all this pressure on this decision, especially if you're combining it with college or university. And it's like, oh, well, what do I got to choose? I can't make up my mind, so let me not go yet. So I guess the first thing I want to ask you about that is, what do you find holds people back when they have that voice in the back of their head going, I don't know that I like this anymore. I don't know that I want to be an accountant. I don't know that I want to be in corporate America. But the thought of doing something different is terrifying, or the risk is so great. So I'm curious to know what you say to people who are in that position.
Well, I would say that life is short. Life is short. You don't want to wake up and go, why did I not try? Why did I not dare greatly? It's just not worth it. And I think we are paralyzed by fear. And even the people that do dare greatly, it's not like fear is disconnected. Fear is there, risk is there, anxiety is there. You just do courageous things, right, in spite of the fear. But I would say the most risky thing you can do is to not take risks. Especially now, and especially if you want to look at like objective workforce sort of marketplace forces, right? They get disrupted all the time, right? Like AI is going to get rid of a whole massive amount of work, of jobs, and some of them highly intellectual jobs, not like low qualification jobs. So the people that will win are the people that have eclectic, unique set of abilities and ways to solve problems. And the only way to do that is to experiment. And there's a lot of science behind that, actually, as a matter of fact. So, like, there's tons of Americans love the story of, Tiger Woods, right? Tiger Woods was like swinging a golf thing when he was 4, right? We love those stories because they're just inspirational, right? But those stories are actually the exception of successful people. Most successful people have symphonic thinking. They have a combination of experiences, worldviews, expertise, skills that somehow combine into a mosaic that is uniquely valuable in a specific moment of time. So most successful people are the people that actually experiment early and not specialize early. And I've experimented my whole life, right? So I can give you like a real life progression for my stuff, but I think that's actually the story of most people who do very well in life. And it's not even about finances or prestige or sort of wealth, for example, but it's really more about, are you doing what you're supposed to do? Are you solving problems that you're supposed to be solving in a way that is unique to you, which is automatically something that will give you the most joy, the most peace, the most flow, the most excitement, or if you're not and you're just holding on, you're, let's say, in a corporate situation and you're making $300,000 and you're miserable, that misery is going to flow over into your family, into your friendships, into your creativity, and ultimately it will actually stop you from progressing even in the thing that you're doing. Because if you're in a survival mode, anxiety-ridden place, it's not only miserable, it's also impossible to progress and create new things and create a new future. So.
Looking back on your career, when I say career, even
careers, yeah,
in the West, we say career, we mean like this one job, but I mean more in your life. That's a better way. Looking back on your life, what's one of the biggest risks you felt like you took that when you were out there, you were like, oh man, this is scary?
Well, I think moving to the U.S. was a big one, right? And because I had, and that was sort of an exponential move in the sense, I call that those moments, right, where I married to an American. Deb moved to the U.S. We had all children there, and then her health was suffering from the climate. And when you start thinking exponentially, 360, and you don't want to attach yourself just to something that you've achieved. Now you're holding on to it. You look at other factors that are important, and for me, the well-being of my wife was more important than the career that I've built over a decade. That was, nationally known, recognized brand, right? Over not only nationally but 15 countries. That was before the break from Ukraine. I toured around that whole post-Soviet space. So I said, you know what? You don't feel well here. Let's move, right? It basically meant, I moved to a country no one cares who I am. It doesn't mean anything, right? So you're starting over. And that's a risky move, but it's such an opportunity to learn. So I started working for this nonprofit, international nonprofit, because I had that sort of skill set, multilingual, multinational, that kind of thing. And that was essentially my portal to America at the time, because I was managing a multi-million-dollar grant on one side. I was overseeing 9 different country projects for nonprofit work in Latin America. So I'd go to all these conferences, and I was just soaking it in, man. I was just so excited. I'm in America. I don't know anything about anything, but I want to learn everything about this place, about these people, how they think, how they work, what they can teach me, right? And to me, that was sort of a big deal. It was a huge deal. It was a risk, and I was drinking out of a fire hose. I had no idea what I was doing half the time, but I was very excited, and I was a sponge. I was just learning. And I think even for immigrants, when I tell immigrants how they should be here, I say, look, you're not going to not be the person from that culture. So you just relax and try to learn it and assimilate. So I assimilate really well, and I think that's what's because of my early childhood migrations. I just assimilate, and I really enjoy assimilating, right? So that was a big risk, and it paid off, and it led to other sort of ventures that I started afterwards.
When you think about people and their careers, a lot of times what happens is people get their identity attached to their role, right? Whether it's a surgeon or a CEO or whatever role it is they play. And then people will find it difficult if, let's say, they get laid off, or they want to do something different, or they retire, and then they're struggling with, well, who am I? You went from being this pop star sensation over here to literally being nobody. I don't say that in a negative way, but just nobody. How did you manage that, in a sense, loss of identity?
I can actually give you a story that was probably one of the big moments in my life where that tension was almost unbearable to me, right? Because after I did a few years with the charity, I started doing some ministry work. Then I started a production company, and then when I moved to Austin, I started a marketing company. And partially it was because the business that I had built before actually failed, because I miscalculated the target market. It just sort of disappeared, and then I was like, okay, what do I do now? So I started this company that is now Third Drive Media, which is a digital marketing. We do personal brand. We work with tech people. We work with nonprofits, things like that. We do video scripting, sort of positioning of brands, things like that. But it all started with basically me going, okay, I have nothing. I just lost my company. All the revenue dried up. I need to start something new. So I put up a basic website. And the skill that I can employ quickly is to go on these, what do you call those? It's like those websites where you can find jobs, like temp jobs or freelancer jobs, basically, right?
Yeah.
And I would put in there, hey, I can shoot, I can edit, I can script, right? Things like that. So I would take any job. So one of those jobs that I took, it was this politician. They were coming to San Antonio, which is nearby, and they were like visiting some sort of factory, steelworking thing, and they wanted to come in and kiss some babies and like shake hands, and they wanted just the footage, no creative work whatsoever. Okay, no conceptual work, no strategic work. They wanted the camera footage. So I'm like, I'm in. I need to feed the family, right? So I go there and I'm standing there waiting for whoever my fixer was, the person who was my contact person, and there's like 3 black SUVs pull in, and the fixer finds me and says, "Oh, you're the camera guy? Yeah, right. That's right. Okay, stand over there, shoot over here. I want you to do this and this and this, right?" And so we spent there. The gig was maybe a couple hours maximum, and I'm doing my thing. And it dawns on me because everything is it's so for show, it's so plastic, and it's just pure PR, and they're treating us, some of the people that were there and me specifically, as the help, right? Like they're bossing me around, like, stand over there, what are you doing, that kind of thing. And I'm standing there and I go, I have entertained millions of people. Like a whole generation of post-Soviet youth grew up on my music. What the heck am I doing here with the camera? It was just surreal and so depressing, And it was really depressing. And I was just standing there really for a good bit, just really feeling sorry for myself. And then it sort of came back to me, and it almost like a little voice told me, "You're providing for your family. That's what you're doing." And I had this peace in my heart, and I was like, yeah, I know what I'm capable of. Like how people treat me in the moment that don't know who I am from Adam will not define me. It will not shape my identity. And I'm just starting a new thing, and I need to humble out. I need to do whatever job comes my way, and I'll do it for cheap. And I am doing something honorable, and that's it, And eventually, the company grew slowly. It's still a small business, but we've gotten numerous awards for our media work, websites, videos. I've worked with incredible people all over the country. I even consulted for the NASA Space Consortium for social media marketing. So the things that I've never thought would be possible, I was able to do. But it starts with a step into the nothingness of life, right? Where you're treated like the help, you're just there somewhere on the fringe, and centering yourself into your identity, into your worth, that is unchangeable and it's independent of your income, the respect you get or don't get, is really important. Because otherwise, if you're so married to the status, right? Or to the house that you might lose, or to whatever, you'll just never dare greatly. You will never do bold things and courageous things, and you'll never explore well. And that's where the gold is. That's where the beauty is.
For those listening, just to add emphasis to that story, it literally would be like Justin Timberlake going over to another country. No one knows who he is, and they're just bossing him around. Like, just
That's
would be
exactly what it was. Yeah.
For us, that we would be able to picture that more and be like, oh my goodness, like I can't imagine. So,
yeah.
But that's amazing that you were able to unhinge and have that moment and go, oh, this is why I'm here. Like to, in a sense, reground yourself to the purpose of what you were doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That reminded me of. We had Devin Harris on the show. He was one of the original Jamaican bobsledders.
Oh, of course.
And he was competing in bobsleigh, but he was still in the Army. And then, they were famous in Jamaica, of course. And then the next Olympics, he's over competing again. And he was telling me this story about how he was in, I think, Albertville, France, competing, and then they're interviewing him on NBC or whatever after, and then he jumps on a plane because he's got to get back to work. And the very next day, he's back in Kingston, and there's some gun battle on the streets, and it's dark, and he's up in this second floor of this building, and his captain won't answer the radio, and so he's got to go find him, and he's crawling on hands and knees in the dark with gunfire, and he's thinking, 24 hours ago, I was being interviewed, in front of the world, and now I'm in a gunfight. It just shows you, these different worlds that people can have, but I think it's actually fascinating.
I think it is, yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about your program, Exponential, and I'm curious as to the process that you take somebody through as they come into your program.
So basically, people that come to us they fall into two general sort of categories. The first one is, they sort of reach a plateau in life, and it's usually sort of the sense of this. I'm a little disoriented. There's something. It could be very vague, or it could be very acute, right? I like my career. I've done really well, but I don't like this aspect. I don't like this context. I wonder if I should change lanes or change industries altogether. That kind of thing, right? Or I'm just generally burned out, and I need to come up. I need to come down from -10 to 0, at least to just reset or something. How do I do that? The second category are people who are about to start a new thing, or they just got a promotion, or they're just getting ready to do this big startup. They're raising capital. They know it's not going to be easy, and they want to be at peak performance shape for as long as possible, because they understand. That is the minority of people, because most of us are reactionary, not proactive, right? So I would say 80% is the first category, 20% is the second. There's nothing wrong with that. It is what it is, right? We're all both in different scenarios. So what we do, the 4 shifts that I do in my core program, which is a 9-week program, is very. It's science-based, it's ancient wisdom-based, and it's very specific. It's not necessarily just sequential, but it all comes together as a mosaic of things that has a powerful impact. So the first one is, we call it fuel, and basically the idea is what kind of fuel you're running on every single day. And the reason we attack that first is because many of us, maybe even most of us, actually, I think the studies are that more than half of Americans are stressed out on any given day. So that kind of fuel is bad fuel. You cannot build a new future. You cannot find a new path. You need to figure out how to win the day. And if you can win one day, and if I can give you the practices to go from stressed out, anxious, to creative, excited, joyful, peaceful, a calm mind every single day, that alone is worth the price of admission, honestly. Like, if you learn that thing, everything is downstream, right? So we work very intensely on that, because without it, it's hard to learn something new and bold. So the second thing is we deal with the problem of lack of direction. And even the most sort of advanced, successful people, life becomes increasingly complex with very contradictory demands and priorities. And people first, they sort of slow down, right? They go fast, then they slow down, go slower, then they stop moving, and perhaps even start going in circles, right? So what we want to do is we want to really clear things up, and that's why I need you de-stressed and calm and creative, because otherwise you can't imagine a different future. And then we want you to figure out, okay, where are we going to go? And once we know, we then decide to optimize all of your life around that thing and how to get there faster. The third shift, so the second shift is called speed, because of the velocity matters, right, and things like that. And the third one's called resistance. And the resistance piece is the internal blocks that show up whenever you're trying to just make any step up in actually any area. It could be romance, it could be marriage, it could be career, it could be anything else. Learning a new language is internally you will be attacked by doubt, by fear, by imposter syndrome, And that's a very evolutionary sort of primal thing in human beings. And because most people sort of don't know how to overcome that, they sort of stay in this sort of space of quiet desperation, as they say, right? So how do you overcome that part of quiet desperation? How do you reprocess, recalibrate all of that and remove those blocks so that you can actually go fast? And the fourth one is essentially more of a long-term thing. It's called radar. And it's 7F, 7 dimensions of life that are based out of, if you're just a rational human being, you'll understand that it makes sense. But there's actually incredible studies. The Harvard study of human development is the most famous one, 80 years old, running. And it's basically derived from the top heavily weighted things that are responsible for somebody being happy, healthy, wealthy, live longer, right? So it's a very simple tool. We rate ourselves, and we sort of rate ourselves once a week after the initial sort of time where I say, hey, rate yourself like every other day, because it's going to be up and down. But if you're between an 8 and a 10 out of 10 on 7 different dimensions in life, and you reach that baseline, you're going to do very, very well in life, basically. So we focus on that, and we maintain that as a core sort of metric, the measurable part of the program.
And what are some of those 7?
Oh, the 7 are faith, family, friends, force. That's what I need to come up with an F. So force is for work, and finances, fitness, and fun. And it's as simple as it may sound. It is profoundly true of any human being. Those are especially the first 4. The first 4 are objectively the most important pieces of any human who wants to flourish. And you will literally live longer if you score highly on those in those dimensions. And of course, needless to say, it de-risks your long-term path, because you're going to find suffering, you're going to find obstacles. With a well-rounded radar, you're going to overcome obstacles much faster. You're going to reach much higher ground in any area, including career, and you will just in general be at a high level of performance across the board.
Faith, family, friends, force, fun, fitness,
and finance.
And finances.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yeah, money is a big part of it, because
Yeah, I want to go back and ask you about that in a moment, but last week I had a friend of mine pass away, and he'd been struggling with his health for a long time, but still he was young, in his 60s, and he had great relationships. In fact, he was one of my first bosses. And I got online with some of us who were all together during that period of life. It was back when we were in college, who also had him as a boss. And we just reconnected. We literally hadn't talked in years. And I had suggested, why don't we meet up on Zoom, in 2 nights, and we can just get together, share some stories. And so we did, and it was this great moment of friends that we just had not seen each other for so long. And, of course, in your mind, you're like, oh, we should do this more often. And everybody says that. But we did say, okay, let's at least try to do this before Christmas, like once before Christmas. But what I found was, had it not been for the death of a friend, that I still wouldn't be talking to those old friends.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you, in your program, are you getting people to think more intentionally about that area of their life? Let's say from the friendship perspective.
It's actually so funny that you mentioned that, and I don't know when the show is going to air, but I literally just posted on Sunday. My newsletter is christianrayflores.com, and the friendship post. And I'm hosting a webinar this Saturday, which is probably going to be, before this airs. I dedicate a whole module to friendships, as I said, and it is it's literally at the very top of the totem pole of high performance and success. And it's a lost art, actually. It's becoming incredibly shallow. There's data around it that people are forgetting how to build friendships. And it's the thing that will give you the most advantages in life in like every area. So we have actually some exercises and some actual assignments where people are evaluating the quality of their friendships, also the dimensionality of their friendships, in deciding what they're going to do about that. And it's really eye-opening. I gotta say, like, people usually go, they're slightly discouraged during the exercise, but it's a good thing because at least you know where you are, right? And you can know where to build towards. But I consider that, I mean, that's objectively, empirically true in human flourishing. But for me, I've had moments, Jamie, that I was just disillusioned about friendship, because we hurt each other, right? And there was this moment we were in Los Angeles at the time, and I was talking to my wife Deb, and I was just struggling. I didn't have deep friendships. I didn't trust people. I was hurt by somebody, and this had nothing to do with the people I was not building here. You know, as it goes, you sort of project your hurts to somebody else, and we had this intense moment with my wife Deb, and she said she was frustrated with me, and she goes, "Who are the men in your life that you will submit to? You know, like, tell me." And I was trying to, and I'm a Christian, obviously, and I said Jesus. And then as you know how, as a word is leaving your mouth in slow motion, you want to take it back because you realize you just literally confirmed what she's trying to tell you, and it's too late. And she didn't even have to say anything. And I was like, gosh, I just don't trust anybody. That is just not good, you know. And I literally, it was a very pivotal moment for me because she didn't even have to say anything. She just looked at me, and I'm like, okay, I get it, you know. And I started investing in friendships. When we moved to Austin, I've been now in Austin for 12 years, and I've treated my friends as a garden that I'm nurturing for 12 years. You know, and really, truly, with the intentionality and the care that you would treat like a bonsai tree. You know how the bonsai people, they just cherish the bonsai tree. You know, I cherish my friendships. I really do. And in 12 years, I have this circle of friends that is an absolute treasure. They will console me when I'm sad. They will give me advice. They'll give me unsolicited advice when I'm about to make a mistake. They've given me tremendous wisdom in family life, parenting, business. Luckily, because of sort of some of the things that I'm doing, some of them, or actually almost all of them, are entrepreneurial people that are mostly actually ahead of me in many ways. So they are pulling me up, right? Even on the vision of the future that I could have for myself. I probably wouldn't have it if it wasn't for them. And because I've been around them for 12 years, my life is dramatically different, you know. And I think we're wired for that. I mean, that was sort of the original design of, we're tribal people, right? And but I think because of one of the downsides of an individualistic society, super fast, high mobility, people don't live in the same city that their parents did, that sort of thing. We're very, very, there's an atomization of relationships. You're just this atom floating in the middle of nowhere. And I feel that we hurt ourselves by not seeing that we're wired for something different. And a big vision and dream of mine for Exponential is to develop this sort of larger community, an exponential tribe they'll go on just hanging out, connecting on a regular basis, you know, for years to come.
I think a lot of men, I'm generalizing, of course, but I think a lot of men struggle to build close, deep relationships and keep them over time.
Yeah.
I love your metaphor about friendships, how you see yours like a garden, which obviously it needs work, it needs upkeep. What would be some practical tips that you think, or that you would coach people on? Hey, if you want to become a better friend, here's just some good practices that you should do.
That's a good question. You know, I think I'll give you a couple of things that are fairly straightforward. You know, express gratitude. I would spend time, in-person time, not Zoom time. And of course, you can keep up with friends forever, I keep up with people on 3 different continents. it's just not the same. So I'm speaking about the garden piece, right? It has to be in person. It has to be in person. And you can even have some long distance people, but I would spend the money and the time to get on a plane and go see them, and vice versa. And that's how important it is, right? That's the in-person piece. I think it's a big deal. I would say putting yourself in structured situations where you have to see them, where it's the default is you will see them rather than default you will not see them, is a big deal. So very intentional sort of structuring of time, space, schedule is a big deal, because if you don't put it on the calendar, it's not going to happen, basically, right? So I would say that is a big deal when it comes to just life hacks for that. I have a group text going with a circle, and so there's a lot of touch points even, right? It's virtual, but it's almost like this little things. Hey, look at this restaurant I found, that kind of thing. Humorous things you find, articles. That's another thing. Expressing gratitude is a big deal. So I make it a point to express gratitude very specifically, not I'm just grateful for you, but I'm grateful because ... on a regular basis. And just having this curiosity, now I'm going from organizational sort of hacks to intentionality, right? To a posture, I guess. I love picking their brains. And that's part of the reason why I've invested a lot of time to get very high quality friends, So they are fascinating people. So I make sure that I have a meal with them, or I'm hanging out at their house, or they're at my house, and I would say, hey, tell me about this thing that you do professionally. Like, how does this work? We don't ask each other what we do in detail. We just say, okay, you're an accountant, right? You're a lawyer. That's all we do, right? But if you have a lawyer friend, you go, okay, tell me the most difficult case you've ever handled. Why was it difficult? And you start pulling at threads, and you start hearing these stories. And A, you get closer to the person. But B, you actually learn something that will give you skills in other areas, which is remarkable. There's all kinds of things you can learn. So I do that. I torture people. I go, tell them about this thing. Like, even if it's very obscure what they do. I have a friend who is a partner in an architecture. He's an architect in an architecture firm. So I basically showed up at his company, obviously invited, but not unannounced. But I made him give me a tour. Show me the materials, the design things. You tell me about how do you do, lead generation? How do you deal with clients? Are they short term? Are they long term? I literally go into that much detail with my friends, and it's to me it's very fascinating. I learn a lot, and I feel closer to them. They feel closer to me. So
that speaks a lot to your curiosity that has just carried with you throughout your life. You're just always curious, which means you're always learning.
Yeah.
In 2018. I started going on a trip every other year with some of my guy friends. And originally, that wasn't the plan. It was just, hey, let's go on an adventure. Let's go to Guatemala. And so, down we went. We have a friend down in Guatemala, so we went to visit him. One of my friends is now 70, 72 actually. And so I always feel like it's almost like my duty to keep him young through adventure. But that's been fantastic. So even though that's every other year, these are places that we cherish. It doesn't even matter where we go. It's just that we have 4 days together. It's not even long. It's like 3 or 4 days.
It's exceptional, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
I want to go back to the beginning of your program. You were talking about stress. What would you do to someone who comes in your program and maybe they're a business owner and they did leave their corporate job. They took all these risks. Now they're cash flow crunch. They're totally stressed. They go online and then they hear they need to manifest, and then they have a terrible attitude. So then they think that's hurting them even more, and it's just this dark pit. Where do you even get people to start?
I have this practice that I teach, and it's called First Hour, and it's very much research based, and it absolutely 100% works. But it's absolutely excruciating to make a habit, right? And I basically say that to people, this is a cornerstone, so you have to make it a habit, right? This is not optional. And basically what I do, and I do actually that myself. I practice what I preach. I do it in the morning. I think you don't have to do it in the morning, but I think for most people, mornings are better. I get up very early. I get up with the sun, plus minus, 20 minutes. A lot of times, like today, I woke up before the sun was up. And I do 3 things. I do a contemplative practice. So it's prayer, meditation, journaling. And that piece is there as a practice of metacognition. So the term metacognition is the ability to think about your thinking, to understand your feelings, give them structure, give them logic, evaluate what they are, what is rational, what's irrational, what you can do, what you can't do about anything about, and place them in a hopeful, optimistic place. The contemplative piece can be walking, praying, nature, sitting down. It could be all kinds of things. So I teach people, okay, if this doesn't work, this will work, this will work. They have like plan B, plan C, plan D, whatever fits better. The journaling is really non-optional because words are how a different kind of part of our brain engages with our feelings when we put words on paper. It doesn't have to be on paper. I do it on paper. Journaling is massive, and there's a lot of data behind this. Gratitude practice is part of the contemplative practice as well, and it's remarkable. I can think I'm a very optimistic, happy guy in general, just because my baseline's pretty high, but I can think at any given moment. It's really frustrating, actually. I can think of, let's say, 4 things I'm grateful for in the next 48 hours. Specific things, not like I'm grateful the sun is shining, right? Something more specific. And if I start journaling, I will come up with 8 or 9 every single time. Because there's a different part of your mind that gets engaged in that exercise. So that establishes a lot of metacognitive practices and rhythms. And most people, we live on autopilot. So what you're doing every morning, if you develop that practice, if I can teach you how to do it, is you're turning off the autopilot and fixing the software that doesn't work well. And if you do it every day, that will change your life. So the second piece we do is physical. So it's weights, exercise every single day. I take a day off on Saturdays, my Sabbath day. And what that does is it adds, you engage your body in what you're doing spiritually and emotionally and mentally as well, right? So you become smarter. You actually activate antidepressants that are in your body. There's a molecule that gets sort of put in your bloodstream that can only happen when you contract your muscles. So it's resistance training. That's called the hope molecule. There's all kinds of stuff that happens that God just created us perfectly. You don't have to go to CVS for most of the stuff. It's right there, in the perfect dosage as well, right? And not bad for you. So the physical piece is there. And then the third one is the learning piece. So it's spending some time, half an hour, 20 minutes, learning something new. It could be a book, a podcast, a YouTube channel, something that you're passionate about, something that you're going, I think I need to pull at this thread. So if you do all 3 every morning, that's going to change your life dramatically. And that's
3 powerful things,
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
And do you have a mantra that you live by?
I do. I have, because I'm a musician and also I'm a Christian, and because I've really hurt myself and others when the driving force of everything I did creatively was my ego. I was inspired by this signature. Johann Sebastian Bach would sign his work, his most brilliant work that changed music forever, right? With 3 words: Soli Deo Gloria, only to God the glory. And that inspired me early on, and I'm like, as an artist, that really spoke to me, because as an artist, you can take credit. As an entrepreneur, entrepreneurs are really artists in the business world, basically, right? So if you're a business person, if you're an ambitious, driven person, and I am very, very driven, it's very easy to believe in the myth that this is you. And it's never you. it's never you, right? It's God, it's community, it's the people that invested in you, people who believed in you, people who tolerated you when you were intolerable, right? It's never you. So that's sort of the Soli Deo Gloria became my thing, and I have a tattoo. The only tattoo I have is the Soli Deo Gloria tattoo. So,
Christian, how can people get a hold of you? If they'd like to learn more about your work, learn more about Exponential Life, or just even get into your universe on one of your your writing.
They can Google Christian Ray Flores, and I'm like, Google will tell you immediately. You can go to christianrayflores.com, and it's a newsletter that drops every Sunday, and it's free, and there's all kinds of stuff there that I try to share just to add value and help people. And then if you want to get serious and want to possibly even consider coaching, then you can go to exponential.life. So exponential without the E, it starts with X in .life. So, and that's where the coaching stuff lives basically, and you can see the dimensionality of it, all of those things.
And for those listening, we will have all that in the show notes, all of those links. You will just go to jamesrobbins.com/podcast and then look for Christian Ray Flores.
You know what Christian, I can give you as well? I forgot completely. Can I put a plug on something? So we have a free assessment. It's called the Exponential Scorecard. And basically what it gives you, you spend 5, 6 minutes sort of answering some questions. And it gives you a personalized report on where you're at along those dimensions that I just mentioned to you, right? And you just answered, I think it's 2-3 questions per dimension, and in 5-6 minutes you get a personalized report. It's an exceptional tool because it's science-based of really seeing visually where you are now. And even if you might be encouraged, you might be a little discouraged, but it's a great place to know, okay, this is my starting point. What do I do now?
Excellent. So could you send me the link to that? And I'll also post that in the show notes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Listen, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for giving your time to tell us about not only your life, but the work you're doing. And I want to say just a couple things as we close. One, I appreciate so many things about you. You know, when you talked about helping people think through their day calmly, I sat back for a moment and I thought, I've actually never seen you riled up. I know your wife probably has and people, but in my history, I've known you, I don't know, I've known you 10, 15 years now.
Yeah.
You're just always calm. Yeah. And I always enjoy conversations with you. You bring a humility, just your curiosity about life, your curiosity with people. And so I'm so excited to hear that you started this Exponential Life program. For any of you listening, I really encourage you to go check that out. Christian Ray really is the big deal. And let me say the thing that you said, I think that stood out to me most in this interview, you made the comment back when the Iron Curtain fell, and you said, when everything is uncertain, anything is possible. Yeah. And not everyone would think like that. They would think when everything's uncertain, well, you know, what can you do? But I love your mindset, I guess, more than anything, your mindset. And I'm so glad that you're spreading that to other people. So, Christian, thank you. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, my friends. Always a pleasure and a joy to catch up with you.
All right. See ya.